Hey guys, it's Chelsea from The Financial Diet, and today we are doing one of my personal favorites, and I hope one of your personal favorites, a Q&A. I threw it out to you guys on Twitter today to ask me any and every question. Obviously, a lot of them are Rona relevant or have something to do with the current times in which we're all living, but they kind of run the gamut, so let's just get right into them. Is there an equitable way to move into an affordable neighborhood where you can be fiscally responsible without gentrifying and displacing the original inhabitants that gave the neighborhoods their characters? Wow, that's a really high-level question. I don't know. I think I live in New York. I live in a neighborhood that I would not describe as overly gentrifying. It's remained fairly consistent over the years, but I have lived in extremely gentrifying neighborhoods, probably the most aggressive of which being Williamsburg, Brooklyn, which I was living in at like the height of like the girls' Brooklyn hipster era. It was horrible. On a more macro level, I think the answers to this are obviously to be found more in policy and things like zoning laws and rent controls and stabilization. Because ultimately what will decide whether or not a community is able to remain in their place of origin and have stability if they are lower income is going to depend on the housing laws and what is available to them. Also, the degree to which the residents are owners of their homes rather than renters, who are obviously often much easier to displace. And of course, the changes on that level can be much more long-term, depending on election cycles and who's in office and who has power. But I will say that for every neighborhood that I'm aware of, there are always community organizations you can join that work on the ground to help make the community more equitable and more livable for people of all different incomes and make sure it's not just about displacement and replacement. I'm a member of a community organization for my neighborhood, Morningside Heights, that focuses on several of the development projects going around right now, which are basically taking locations or buildings which are currently being used by the public or have mixed income housing or various other less profitable things for the community and are trying to be replaced with things like luxury condos or, further extensions for the universities here that don't at all serve the community. And when you break it down into individual projects, individual buildings, individual locations, it can become a lot easier to have a direct impact on the neighborhood you live in a positive way. I think for most of us, when we move into a big city, often if we want to live in a decent apartment and we have a relatively normal income, the housing stock that's going to be available for us is often going to be in neighborhoods that are in some kind of a transition. But it doesn't mean that you have to be a shitty resident when you live there. You don't have to be part of the problem. You can choose where you're putting your consumer dollars in terms of the businesses you're supporting. You can choose to support elected officials who work for everyone, not just the wealthy developers. And you can just be aware of the history of your community and what's happening in your community and how you can be a force for the positive. It's not a perfect answer, but in cities like New York, I'm often a little bit frustrated by the binary nature of the gentrification conversation because it's often pitted as working class versus upper class. But for most of New York, it's really not. Most of the middle class in New York has a hard time finding a place to live. So really, for most of us, it's working all the way through upper middle class who are fighting against a very, very wealthy elite who are taking up so much of the housing stock with investment apartments and demolishing things to build luxury condos. We have much more in common with a homeless person who might be living in our neighborhood park than we do with a billionaire developer who's trying to turn an old church into another Whole Foods. Keeping that mentality and using your voice for as much positive impact as you can, I think, are the best solutions we have. What is the worst contemporary definition of success you have encountered? Oh, for sure, like the hustle porn, like the LinkedIn tech bros writing their diaries about how they get up at 4 a.m. and eat only 2 meals a week and all that deranged shit so that they can be more productive and optimize their lifestyles and just all of that stuff. I hate. I also hate the stuff that's what I would describe as capitalist feminist, where it's are we just measuring how feminist a company is by, if it has a female executive on the board, even if all their employees don't have comprehensive maternity leave or women are in all the lowest paid positions. And, I hate stuff that glamorizes kind of sacrificing your life to work. And I hate stuff that glamorizes really superficial, identity-based solutions to much more intrinsic problems. Like, don't show me how many women are on your board. Show me how like all the women at your company are treated on average. Show me, you know, what your company is doing in the world, you know? And as far as the like, you know, I wake up at 4 a.m. and like dedicate my life to my job, like all that stuff, I'm just like, I think it's rare that you will find a person who on their deathbed is like, I'm so glad that I had absolutely no life outside of just like optimizing every waking moment to be a more productive human being. That sounds bad. So I hate that stuff. I hate the life hacking stuff. I think what we need in the world in general is just much more focus on our humanity and much more focus on living a well-rounded lifestyle. And the fact that all of the technology that is available to us should make it easier for every person to live a more balanced and less harsh life, and not, you know, be encouraging us to sacrifice our lives more and more to work and production. Not a fan of any of that. Also, like anyone who's writing like blog posts on LinkedIn. How has your perspective on your career/business changed since the pandemic? Have you noticed a change in the perspectives others have on your business? I ask this as a fellow self-employed professional and YouTuber. No, I wouldn't say that the perspective on my business has changed post-pandemic, because I think before pandemic, we had an extremely humanist, moderate, conservative approach to business, not super focused on like exponential growth or profit margins or any of those things. Very focused on creating good content, creating a great work environment for our employees, building a great life for the people who work with us, doing projects we all feel passionately about. And as a result, not really much has changed. We're all remote now, which kind of is sad for me personally, because I miss going into the office every day and I miss seeing everyone. But I haven't changed. I've just become more convinced than ever that that is the approach that I want to take. I want everyone involved with the company to have a great work-life balance, have a great professional life, and remember that their work is not their meaning of life. I think that a lot of people who were probably way too invested in their jobs have realized like either they've been laid off or furloughed or shown that they were completely dispensable to their employer, or they have realized in this chaos that like there are so many other more important things out there. And I hope that people take that with them. Like, life is too GD short to be answering emails at 11 p.m., especially for some, you know, faceless corporation. What's the most wholesome thing you've read or learned about as a result of being stuck at home during this time? Wholesome. Oh God, it's gotta be those freaking penguins going on like various activities. Nothing more wholesome than those penguins. The ones where they're all like bopping down the stairs. They're like, dook, dook, dook. Oh man, when I saw those penguins, or like those rescue puppies getting to visit the aquarium, like, just like, I don't even know if like, it's really all that great for the penguins. Like, I don't know if the penguin has like the prefrontal cortex necessary to understand what's going on, but like, I love it. The most unwholesome thing I saw during lockdown was the other day on Twitter. I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was like, someone was like, I didn't realize that a kangaroo pouch is like a hole into their body. And they like showed a kangaroo pouch interior. And I was like, oh, like I just wanted to like erase that from my mind. Horrifying. I don't know if this was already answered previously, but were the initial investments into TFD ever paid back to those investors/partners? And if so, to what extent and how far after TFD's establishment? The only actual literal investment we ever got into TFD was $5,000 from John and Hank Green's foundation, where they were giving it to internet projects and creators that they wanted to support, which was a grant, so it was never paid back. Although through our long partnership with Complexly, TFD earned revenue that was shared with Complexly while we worked together. So yes, that eventually was paid back and then some. They also did invest in some resources for us when we were setting up our YouTube, but everything was paid back and then some. And then my husband took a sabbatical from his work for a month to help build out TFD's ad infrastructure when we started the website. And he, as a result, owns 5% of the company, totally separate from me. So that's sort of his compensation. And, the other investments, quote unquote, were, our families. And my co-founder Lauren and I, like our partners, each took a huge burden when we quit our jobs to do TFD. And I think that's been paid back in the fact that we both earn a good salary now and have a substantial ownership in this successful company. So everyone's happy. But that's the only investment we got. Has any other finance/money-based YouTube channel distanced themselves from you after your Bernie video? What has been the reaction behind the scenes from said video? If they have distanced themselves from me, I'm not aware of it. But to be fair, I wasn't really close with any other personal finance/money-based YouTube channels outside of I have a few friends, and that hasn't changed anything. They've known I'm a bleeding heart since we first met. I mean, I'm sure that I've long since been blocked by certain notable personal finance influencers with, in my opinion, morally and ethically dubious empires. But I'm sure that's for a whole variety of reasons. First and foremost, probably because I'm a mouthy woman. What was the process like for choosing your company's healthcare policy? Terrible! Oh my God. Oh my God. It is so funny to me that more small business owners are not radical activists for Medicare for all, because why am I doing this? I did not even go to college. Why am I responsible for sifting through just mountains and mountains of paperwork and signing forms in triplicate and reading tons of shit I don't understand to pick a policy, and medical is separate from dental and vision, and just the nightmare. And I will say we worked with an ADP rep who's super nice, zero complaints about that element of the process, but the process itself is why am I doing this? And for the record, we picked an extremely good plan. TFD covers 70% of it. We did all we could to make it a good thing for our employees who opted into it, but why are small business owners doing this? Why is it left to us? It's so stupid. And also more importantly, a lot of them out there are either choosing to be cheap on this or opting out of doing it altogether. So the whole system, I just Medicare for all, guys. It's a no-brainer. Can we see Mona's new haircut? For those of you who followed, I had to give Mona a haircut myself. And listen, I mean, it's not terrible. It's not good. She looks like she's wearing chaps because her legs are much thicker than her body hair, but she was getting matted, and because she tends to mat really badly after she gets a bath because she rubs herself all over things and you can't stop her. So it was a whole thing, and the groomers were closed, so I had to do it myself. But she was such a good girl. She stood still through the whole thing, just waiting there I don't know what's going on, but I guess I deserve this. So anyway, she was a very good girl, and she got her little quarantine coif. Someone rang the doorbell downstairs, so she's a little stressed. Mona, why are you stressed? It's okay. It's okay. She's a little stressy girl who's just lost a lot of hair. This one is cute. How do you find resources that teach you how to do home DIYs like painting, installing shelves, etc.? And can you talk about your design process for a room like your bedroom with color schemes, fabrics, etc.? So here are a few pictures of my home, including my bedroom. So there's, a ton of great sources. I am a pretty big follower of apartment therapy. I love their stuff, although sometimes it can be a little intimidating. I watch a ton of YouTube. I just Google the project for YouTube and see what comes up and follow the ones that seem to be highly rated and whatnot. So there's tons of different sources for learning, and it's really project by project. But I'm also pretty good at knowing where I'm above my pay grade and I need help. And with certain things, if I'm having to mount something into brick, I don't do that. I have someone help me with that. But for most of it, things like I painted several rooms during quarantine because I have nothing else to do. And, I used to be terrible at painting, and now I can paint very, very sort of demanding colors pretty well and without too much of a mess. And I can even do some of the edging by hand. So, I think for most of it, remembering that most of these things are not that complicated in practice, and that it's easy to learn is very important, because otherwise it's so easy to throw up your hands and be like, I could never. You could. And then the other question was, can you talk about your design process for a room like your bedroom with color schemes, fabrics, etc.? Always the same process. I take an inventory of the items I already have and want to work with and don't want to replace or get rid of. Then from there, I kind of consider what's feasible in terms of like, well, what are the colors or design cues or eras of these items that I have to kind of work with. And then I will build a mood board with inspiration about the room specifically, drawing usually from, Pinterest, Instagram, magazines, that kind of thing. Once I have the mood board, I'll generally settle on a wall color, whether for accent or the whole wall. That will usually define a few other things. And I really just kind of see what looks good. I initially, when I started my bedroom, had totally different thoughts on my inspiration board about where I wanted to go with things like accent colors. It didn't work in practice, but the great thing is when it comes to like colors, you can easily get swatches and samples. You don't have to go all the way into investing in a gallon of paint before you see how something's gonna look. And especially when it comes to something like paint, definitely do yourself a favor. Most paint stores will offer very inexpensive samples, just like a little tiny amount of the paint. It's much better than a swatch. Like swatching is okay for like looking at, colors against fabrics or things like that. But when it comes to actually going on a wall, I highly recommend always doing a small sample on a patch of the wall so that you can see how the color looks in different lights, but also how the color looks when it dries, which is very different from how it appears on a swatch or a computer screen, or even when you look at a drop of the paint. So in general, just remember at the end of the day, yes, inspiration is good. Yes, having ideas is good, but be open to the fact that things may not work in practice in your space the way they would work in someone else's space. And it's always okay to make changes. I changed my bedroom like 4 times before I arrived at the final version. It happens. Also, don't be afraid to have fun. I am so sick of like the interior design stuff that's like Scandinavian minimalism, white on white on white on white, those like horrible like white kitchens. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's so few opportunities in life to really show personality, take some risks, be bold. I change things all the time. Sometimes things don't work out, but I think a space always is my favorite when it looks like it's really reflective of the person and their own style and their own inclinations, even if they're not my own. Be bold. How do you find your French in-laws are at talking about money? Are they as open and frank about their money mistakes as you are? And have there been any interesting discussions because of this? I'm interested if there was a cultural difference between you. No. My in-laws are a particular bunch, but they don't really talk about money. They don't talk about professional stuff. They're very old school. They're like a big like farming. They're tied to the land. They're tied to like their like outdoorsy activity. Like they don't really, like Mark and I both work jobs that are very abstract for them, and like they don't really understand and don't care. So like we don't really talk about those things. And when it comes to money, like the biggest cultural difference between us and French people is like French people do not realize how difficult finances are in America, and how much of this stuff is up to you to navigate, and how hard it can be, and how expensive things are. So like they genuinely don't even understand the concept of like the student loan crisis or like medical bills or any of this stuff. And so there's just a lot of lack of kind of understanding there. And I would say also like in America, many older generations are like, you just don't talk about money, and that kind of translates as well. So like it all combines to be an environment in which like we don't talk to our in-laws really about money, but also like because we live in New York City, my husband and I, and we both work these like kind of techie sort of jobs to them. Like they both like tease us about being rich all the time. They're like, oh, you richy riches whenever we come around. And we're like, honeys, you guys have like multiple homes. Talk about Elon Musk. Your rant's been getting me through these Rona blues. Oh my God, Elon Musk. Oh my God. What is there to say that hasn't been said? I just like, first of all, like anyone who is still like standing that man after all of this, just truly love yourself. But I think the best thing I saw about Elon Musk the other day was someone was like, the most important thing to remember in all of this is that like On top of all of the insanity, and let's keep in mind the fact that he was like actively fighting with random Twitter users about the coronavirus while his girlfriend was in labor with their child. This is his 7th child. This man has like a whole freaking family. And actually, his first wife wrote an extremely fascinating article about that whole arc of them being together and her being a starter wife. Highly recommend that reading. She was the mother of his first 6 children. And I just like, I'm sorry, but my ultimate take on this is like, men are allowed to be so messy and still be treated as like geniuses. Could you imagine a woman out here tweeting the level of mess that Elon Musk is frequently tweeting and having, and like literally birthing 7 children and like having 3 husbands and all these boyfriends, like, and still being treated with such seriousness by so many people? I submit that that would be impossible. Just, Elon, get it together. How do you find joy in cooking for one? I can't seem to be motivated to cook if I'm not cooking for someone else. Listen, Soledad, a couple weeks, maybe a month ago, I would have been like, oh, you just like, you have to find a project you're excited about and like learn and like big batch. And like after fucking like, what is it, 67,000 days of quarantine, the joy in cooking for one, it's hard to find. It's hard to find the joy in anything at this point. Like cooking for one has become very difficult for me. And all I would say, per my other Corona rant, which I'm happy to link in the description, is like, pat yourself on the back just for getting through things, even if it means you're having like heated up noodles for the 4th day in a row. It's all good right now. Any advice on dealing with finances in an emotional capacity right now? Quarantine is testing my mental health badly, and I feel like it's even harder than normal to think about what I'm spending rather than just mark it off as frivolous self-care or ignore it altogether. Oh man, Anna, right there with you. I think, again, overall Rona advice is just like focus on making it through. Give yourself a pat on the back for just dealing and coping. But when it comes to emotional spending and, you know, feeling like it's pointless to be making the good decisions, I think a lot of people are also feeling similarly when it comes to like, I'm just gonna eat whatever because who gives a shit anymore? Like life has no more meaning. I think trying to find a few things that you're excited about that have a slightly longer time window, you know, 3, 6, 9 months or what have you, that you will want to work toward. And of course, make them reasonable. Don't make it to be like, I want to go to a music festival because like, ooh, not clear when that's happening again. But if you can make it something that feels reasonable to yourself and that feels motivating and that more importantly helps you focus on a time past this, because I think what really saps the most at our mental energy and our will to continue and our ability to feel motivated is often what is natural, which is thinking about what the next few weeks or few months are going to look like, because it's right in front of us and it's the most uncertain. But one thing that I find high reassurance in is that through so many historical upheavals, including ones very similar to what we're going through now, things always come back to a kind of normal. Life will always find a way, as they say. And you're gonna wanna be prepared for that. And if you continue to get caught up in the day-to-day despair at the expense of building for something greater, we're all gonna come out on the other side of it, and you're gonna be way less prepared than you could have been. So forcing yourself to imagine that time and trying to set some concrete goals around it and trying to tie your decisions on a day-to-day to those greater goals, I think is very healthy. I have a few of them myself, and they're helping me get through, baby. What were some of the first signs your business was growing in the right direction, and how did you know to start hiring? You know to start hiring when things are becoming very painful without a hire and it's really difficult on a day-to-day basis. And what were some of the first signs your business was growing in the right direction? We were making money. People wanted to work with us. Our platforms were growing in a sustainable way. You know, we weren't just like chasing virality. We were building a dedicated, loyal audience. And I think those things are all very good signs, because on the internet, so many things are ephemeral and you can have one thing blow up and then nothing else work. And I think that slow, steady, it may not break the charts, but it's definitely making a dent and making slow growth. That's when you know it's good. This is hilarious. Someone says, how do I deal with criticism from coworkers who make fun of me for things like veganism, minimalism, and being debt-free? I don't force any of these things upon everyone. They just ask about it and then they laugh. Fuck them. You don't need them. Who needs them? They sound horrible. What horrible coworkers. We're in a pandemic. Can they not find something better to do with their time than make fun of your life choices? How has your budget changed during the pandemic? I don't spend money anymore. I ordered shoes. No, I spend money occasionally, but my spending is like, boo, just like so little comparatively. I had a great job interview right before the pandemic. Should I reach out or assume that when they're open again and ready, they will reach out? Definitely follow up. We actually interviewed someone who was fabulous right before the pandemic hit. We froze everything the first week or two when it was really touch and go, and then things started to be more promising and we started to see our revenue go back up, and we ended up hiring that person. So definitely be persistent, and I'm sure that if it was a fabulous interview, they're still interested in you now. It's just a question of staying on their radar until the moment that the trigger can be pulled. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and to come back every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday for new and awesome videos. Goodbye.